Hello and welcome to this Conversations on Groong episode. Armenia signed a long-term lease with the US to outsource the management of a road through the province of Syunik, and Iran and Russia were vociferous opponents of this deal. So we are exploring the view from Iran with Hamid Bahrami, who is an Iranian independent international relations analyst specializing in Eurasian and Middle Eastern affairs.
Before we begin, to our listeners, thank you for following us. We appreciate the trust that you put in us to bring you consistent, fact-based analysis of Armenian news. And we are one of the few outlets that does this consistently and independently without any foreign financing. So if you appreciate that, please consider giving additional financial support to us by going to podcasts.groong.org/donate. And there you can choose from Patreon, buy me a coffee, or a few other options. And you can either become a sustaining donor or become a one-time donation. Anything you do would be appreciated. And if you can't do that, you can like, share, and comment on our content in order to help us increase our reach through the algorithm. That is also very useful and very helpful.
Hovik, we have often concentrated on the liking and the commenting part, and people have come through. There are a lot of people who like our shows. There are a lot of them who comment on our shows. Just go to our YouTube videos. You will see the last one was in the hundreds of comments, I think. But let me emphasize the sharing component of that. If you share our shows to your circle of friends, on your social media page or whatever, that will bring new readers to our channel, and that will help us a lot. So don't forget to share our shows if you think that they are worth sharing.
All right, on to the show.
Hamid Bahrami, welcome to the Groong podcast.
Thanks for having me, and thank you, Hovik, for facilitating this show.
Welcome to the show, and it's great to have you. This is your first time, but we hope we'll frequently invite you on the show to talk about similar issues.
Hamid, we read your recent article with great interest. Zangezur, the flashpoint of the Caucasus, the formulation of the New World Order war on Iran's borders. And that's actually what got us to connect with you and ask you to be on our show. We're going to put the link to that article in our show notes for our listeners who want to actually check that out. It's a very interesting piece of analysis. Since this is your first time, though, on our show, would you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself? Who are you? What are you up to?
Actually, my name is Hamid. I'm originally from Iran and been living in Glasgow, Scotland for 10 years. I have a little strange background on politics. For a few years, I spent as an opposition to the Iranian political establishment until 2020. And then, especially after the starting NATO-Russia war in Ukraine, I decided to change my political orientation and just to be independent. But I'm not independent as an independent. I follow my country national interests. Doesn't matter who rule the country. And actually, I just focusing on the changing world order and get a piece of cake of the new world order for Iran.
Well, definitely, your article is in Persian, but Google Translate, there are so many translation options. I'm pretty sure that anyone with the browser should be able to quickly translate that, and it's very readable. It's very meaty. Anyway, so we wanted to invite you to talk about your article, which is exactly about the topic of this Zangezur corridor. The meeting in the White House essentially maybe even increased the urgency of this discussion. And so let's just jump into that and start from that point. Last Friday at the White House, Nikol Pashinyan and Ilham Aliyev stood alongside Donald Trump in what was hyped to be a historic breakthrough. They didn't sign, Armenia and Azerbaijan didn't sign a peace deal. They only initialed one. They agreed to pull out of the OSCE Minsk group after nearly 30 years and handed Trump the 99-year exclusive rights to build the TRIPP, the Trump Route for International Peace and Prosperity. Basically, it's the rebranding of the Zangezur corridor. And just an aside, Trump sweetened the package for Azerbaijan with promises to scrap Section 907 and explore a strategic deal with Iran, possibly including arms sales, which is, I think, important for our discussion. And what was interesting was the reaction from Iran and Russia. Iran's reaction was ambiguous. I mean, it was maybe both, very strict and at the same time quizzical. I don't know. I'm running out of adjectives to say, but the supreme leader's advisor, for instance, let me just phrase it this way: Ali Akbar Velayati warned that Tehran would never tolerate an American-controlled corridor to its north. But President Pezeshkian and the foreign ministry took a softer tone, saying that Iran's red lines seemed to be intact. Meanwhile, Russia barely blinked. The Kremlin voiced support for peace. They welcomed the peace and said that the November 2020 trilateral agreement still stands. And that was that. A lot of contradictions just in these two phrases, I think. Peace, we've talked about it before. This is not a peace deal yet, and I subjectively will say that a peace deal is far, far away from being signed. But the November 2020 trilateral statement also, it includes Russia as the controller of the corridor, not America. So I don't know how that agreement still stands. But anyway, that's beside the point. I want to ask you about the Iranian reaction. Why was the Iranian reaction so mixed, at least apparently from the outside observer's perspective? Does it indicate tension inside the corridors of power of Tehran?
Well, if I want to say what's going on inside Iranian political establishment, I can briefly say Iran is in paradigmic chaos. They don't know what they want. Iran, especially their current government, doesn't know what it wants. But if you see the Ali Akbar Velayati, the supreme leader advisor, is saying something different. He has been saying these things for many years. But the decision-making process in Iran is so complicated. And as I said, Iran political establishment is in paradigmic chaos. They don't know what they want. They do not have any specific strategy for the South Caucasus and broader for the current changing the world order. Look, they are still try to start negotiation with the United States. Many have been saying that the negotiation with Trump is pointless. Israelis and Trump are in same position, but we see some in military say, no, we do not negotiate. And some in government say, yes, we want to negotiate. In the case of the South Caucasus and the Zangezur corridor, we see the same things. They don't know what they want. But the hard core of the power, especially in the supreme leader office, they know that this corridor is a threat for Iran nationalist interest. That they have been saying same things, but I don't see any strategy. If there is a strategy, I don't know. But for 2 times, then the current president of Iran traveled to Baku, but not Armenia. He will visit Yerevan soon, but I
Yeah,
think
next
it's too
week.
late.
Next week.
I think it's too late.
Do you believe, I mean, you said the decision-making process in Iran is complicated. Is this an issue of conservatives versus progressives or reformists, or is there more to it? Because I just don't see, how you could achieve progress without there are many things that may have complicated decision making, especially regarding Caucasus. We know Azerbaijan, ethnic kin to some of the Iranian minority. I just can't believe that even after today they will be able not to be undecided about how to move forward in the Caucasus. Do you believe this will be a wake-up call for Iran to be more bold in its actions?
A wake-up call, if you mean for its policy on the South Caucasus, I don't think so. I don't think so because that's Iran foreign ministry are controlled by those who called constructivists in international relation, the idea, the theory of the constructivism, and they do not believe in the balance of power there. They just want to solve the issue by talking, by diplomacy. While I don't believe that diplomacy work without power. Iran missed the opportunity in 2022. They did wrong. Like Russians, they did wrong. But Russia still has a space in the South Caucasus. Iran still can, but it's a little late. For example, for many years, some people in Iranian political establishment analyzed, said, go in Armenia, make deal, get economically involved with the Armenian government and society, but no one is listening.
Hamid, question about why it is so complex to get decisions and actions done in the Iranian political establishment. What do you attribute it to? And also, I was thinking, maybe this is politically incorrect to think, but the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, is 86 years old at this point. Is this contributing to some of the, if not inertness or paralysis, but the slowness of decision making? Because everybody does say the ultimate decision belongs to the supreme leader. I am wondering.
This is in Western media. That's the ultimate decision making is with supreme leader. I used to think the same, but in the last 3-4 years, no, it's not. The supreme leader has power, has a big power. If I want to give you a percentage, I can say 60%, not a 100%. The main reason that the decision-making process regarding the South Caucasus in Iran is so complicated is the main reason is the pro-Baku characters inside Iran. They have a strong network, media, lobby, and they do not allow. I can give you an example. During the 2020 war between Yerevan and Baku, Iran was willing to help Armenia despite the Iranian government believe that Artsakh is a part of Azerbaijan, but a part of decision-making establishment wanted to help Armenia to just for balancing out power. But for Azerbaijan character, especially in the northwest city of Iran, some senior clerics there, they just disrupted. Some Iranian Azerbaijanis into a street and chanting against the government, why you want to help Armenia. That is the decision making, make the forming of a long-term strategy for Caucasus so complicated.
What is your take on Russia's response? Because Russia's response was also timid, and I realize that Russia is very busy with the war in Ukraine. Russia's response over the last 5 years has been very timid, I would say. How strategic is this issue for Russia?
Russia made a big mistake in 2020. They saw a pro-West prime minister in Armenia, Pashinyan, Mr. Pashinyan, and Russian thought if just be silent or just not really helping balancing of power between Yerevan and Baku in 2024, they thought that they can hold Pashinyan accountable. But that is turned to themselves. They trusted Ilham Aliyev, and now they pay the price. We know that yes, Russia is so busy in Ukraine, and Russian influence in the South Caucasus is weakened, but they still have power in both Armenia and Azerbaijan, as well as in Georgia.
Is that because of their economic entanglement with these three countries?
Yes. One of them is economic, and the second one is they have in Armenia, Russian still has military bases in Georgia as well. But the problem is that they lost the game. They lost the game. It's because that they trusted Ilham Aliyev. They trusted him, and they thought that Aliyev is an authoritarian man, is the authoritarian regime, doesn't have any connection with Western democracies, but I think they didn't understand what is going on regarding what I call it the semicircle of the containment strategy of the NATO, that I can explain how this formed this semicircle.
Hamid, you mentioned NATO. Well, Iran has called Turkey's so-called Zangezur corridor the NATO corridor. And the US is now calling it TRIPP, which is also known as the Trump route. And yesterday we published an interview, maybe you saw it, but I won't blame you if you haven't seen it yet. We did this with Douglas Macgregor, Colonel Douglas Macgregor, who believes that the project is part of grand design shaped largely by Israel and secondarily in London and New York to encircle both Iran and Russia, split them apart, and block the north-south and also the Belt and Road corridors all at the same time. McGregor warned that by inserting U.S. forces to replace the Russians in running this corridor, Washington is now suddenly committing itself to an Israeli-Turkish-Azeri alignment aimed at isolating Iran, all while overextending an already debt-ridden America that is no longer as powerful as it was in 1991 at the end of the Cold War. In your view, how real is the danger that this Trump route presents in becoming part of this wider encirclement that Colonel McGregor was mentioning?
Unfortunately, I have not watched the show that you said, but as you can see on my article, it's a semicircle which starts from the Iraq, goes to the South Caucasus, just cross the Caspian Sea, go to Central Asia, then to Afghanistan, Pakistan, and then end it to the Persian Gulf. This is the semicircle which can contain Iran, Russia, and China. Just disrupt their connection lands. Now they are in the South Caucasus. The Zangezur corridor is a part of this game. The connection point, and we all remember during the 2020 war, we saw the Islamic fighters. We saw them fighting for the Baku.
Mm-hmm.
And
we
now
had Syrian mercenaries and other mujahideen.
Exactly. And now they are accumulating and training them in Central Asia and Afghanistan as well. And this is the part of the game. The United States is a part of this game. Yes, we all know that the United States is leading NATO, but it's the big plan to contain Russia, China, and Iran. The Zangezur corridor, the part of the game. I see some say no, it is the change its name to the Trump path or something like that, just to rebrand it, and that the soft approach from the Russians and Iranians is they are waiting the situation, how goes well and how not go well. But as I said, in Iran, the paradigmic chaos does not allow them to believe in Russians, and Russian is so busy in Ukraine, and their behavior in the South Caucasus and against NATO, it depends to the war in Ukraine. If they can get a total victory there, they will control the Black Sea. And then Turkey, as a contractor of the NATO and agent of the NATO, will depend on Russian hegemony in the Black Sea, and just Russian will have more power in the South Caucasus because that Turkey lose its position in the Black Sea. But we can see United States there. The United States is coming there because that the West is losing war in Ukraine. That is the main reason.
Do you think that this project, this Trump route project or Zangezur corridor project, or just route or whatever it's needing to be called, could push Armenia away from its the current cooperative stance that it has vis-a-vis Iran?
It depends. It depends if the corridor is really an extraterritorial one, which with Baku and Turkey are looking for it,
Mhm.
and NATO as well. If it's an extraterritorial one, that will end the common border between Iran and Armenia. But I don't think that for now this idea of the extraterritorial corridor will implement because of the several reasons. We are going to have another war between Iran and Israel. The war in Ukraine is not resolved, and that is why everyone are waiting. If Iran can win the war with Israel, that's I don't think the corridor will establish.
Yeah.
Everything depends to the balance of power. If Iran win, if Russia win in Ukraine, if Iran win with Israel, the war with Israel, there are not going to be any Zangezur corridor.
Speaking about the war in Israel, since you mentioned it, a recent analysis by Trita Parsi in Foreign Policy estimates that Israel is likely to launch a new war against Iran before the end of 2025, possibly as soon as late August. And this round is expected to be, of course, more intense than the June conflict. And we know that Iran is preparing rapid, decisive strikes that in response to Israel's mowing the grass strategy, essentially. The stakes could be higher if the United States becomes directly involved, but Israel hopes this, and I think many expect this too. So it could potentially escalate into a regional war. I mean, all of this sounds very pessimistic, but how, in your estimation, how likely do you believe is this war? Maybe, what is the basis for your estimations? Like, could it be as early as end of August, as predicted?
I can say if the Israeli and American side feel that the attack against Iran will not cost a huge number of their casualties or economic issues, oil price, or something like that, they will attack it tomorrow morning. It depends. If Iran can show that more war and more attack will cost them, they do not. They will not attack Iran. But as I see in Iran, we see actually different behavior. Military commanders say that if a starting war against Iran, we respond decisively. But at the same time, Iran president say we want to negotiate. That is a contradiction. They don't know what they want.
You mentioned some of the some of this already, but I really want to highlight and talk a little bit more about missed opportunities for Iran and the proactiveness that some of the other states, such as Israel and the United States, are showing in the region. So for nearly 3 decades, Iran treated its northern frontier as a low-risk zone. As long as Artsakh was Armenian or Artsakh or Nagorno-Karabakh, Tehran could rely on a stable Armenian-Russian relationship to secure its interests there. And before 2020, Iran had two northern neighbors it didn't have to worry about, one with Armenia and the other with Armenian-controlled Artsakh. So that changed after the 44-day war when Azerbaijan took Artsakh. And Iran today is forced to deploy substantial forces on the north, both along the border with Azerbaijan, on the border with occupied Artsakh, and on the border with Armenia, because Azerbaijan threatens Armenia now. And from our discussions, and it seems like you also hinted about this, A key factor in Iran's passive stance was perhaps the ethnic connection between Azerbaijan and Iran's own Azeri population. And I know this is a very sensitive area, but the sensitivity discouraged I believe, closer Iranian-Armenian cooperation. Instead, Tehran essentially deferred to Moscow the handling of the Armenia. And even as Israel and the West consistently and aggressively were arming and supporting Baku. And then we saw what the result of that was, in the 12-day war. We saw how Azerbaijani territory was leveraged by Israel. And all of those, armaments that go to Baku, some say, honestly, you could conquer Armenia many times over with that amount of weapons. So it seems like, from my perspective at least, it seems like those weapons are destined for a much bigger battle than a battle with Armenia. So did I miss anything? Why did Iran remain largely passive on its northern policy for so long, given Israel's long-term military support for Azerbaijan? And are there any other factors than what I mentioned?
First of all, let me say that yes, Iran missed opportunities to fill the vacuum that left after the 2020 war. But let's get back 20 years, 30 years before. Before the 2020 war, Russia was the dominant power in the whole region for years. I can say for two centuries. When Iran lost the Caucasus to Russians 200 years ago, till 2020, Russia was dominant power. But in 2020, as I already said, by their mistake, they lost their hegemony. And Iran could fill the vacuum, but the decision-making process complicated. Turkey just jumped there and filled a part of the vacuum. And now the United States and other Western countries try to fill the rest. And that is the why Iran could, during and after the 2020 war, fill a part of the vacuum. Russians welcomed Iran, but I remember Iran's foreign ministry at that time suggested as an initiative which wrote it in Western documents. That is the problem, the main problem with Iranian behavior, that is they do not have any strategy.
Actually, on this matter, so do you believe that with the comprehensive strategic partnership with Russia, I mean, it has the word strategy in that document, right? So do you believe that with that partnership, at least now, Russia and Iran have a better idea of how to divide and how to complement each other in the region? And as part of that strategic partnership, could we see reactivation or some kind of benefit for Iran, some kind of an ability for Iran to enter the region more boldly than it has in the past?
Regarding Iran and Russia partnership, first of all, what is now signed and a treaty and has become as a treaty is a little different with what it was supposed to be signed. The former president of Iran, who was killed during the helicopter crash, the text is what it was supposed to sign is different. it was deeper than what we have now. The current government, and I can say Iranian society, that a huge part of Iranian society are pro-West. They don't like Russia. It's at that time when President Pezeshkian signed the treaty with Russia on 17th January. I wrote an article and explained this partnership need to be deepened in both societies. Otherwise, it will remain on paper. That is why, because of the political establishment, the foreign ministry of Iran do not like Eastern countries. As I said, I have been repeating the phrasing, the paradigmic chaos. For several times, I have been repeating this. Iranian political establishment, the current government, its bureaucracy are pro-West. They want to make the deal with the West, but the reality on the ground push Iran toward East. That is the fantasy contractivism inside the Iranian foreign ministry. Just try to make the deal with the West, but the same enemy, the changing world order, the war, the 12 days war with Israel, sanctions, all these things push Iran toward the east. But I remember when Iran signed partnership with Russia in society, pro-West media started saying that some, I say this in bracket, some are selling Iran to Russia. And I see some people, the same story in Russia against Iran. Those pro-West in Russia, I know they are sidelined right now.
I remember that when China and Iran signed the deal for, China provided loans to develop ports and infrastructure in Iran. A lot of Iranians were also against that deal because they thought it's deep, entrenching Iran too much in the east, I guess.
Yes. Let me. I just remember when it was in 2019 or 2020 when Iran and China signed that memorandum or treaty or whatever it's called. At that time, as I said in the early minutes of this interview, I was an opposition. And at that time, I gave an interview to the Epoch Times and just was against it because that we wrongly believe that China is going to exploit us. But that was a Western media propaganda against they do not want these three countries to be in the same path.
Hamid, when you were talking about the relationship between Iran and Russia, of course, the country that comes to mind is Syria, where it doesn't seem like they ever had a particularly cooperative. I mean, they were cooperating with each other, but they were also competing with each other over there. But in December 2024, Turkey and Israel, with US backing, took Syria and displaced Iranian and Russian influence. Hezbollah and Hamas were severely weakened, leaving Iran's Western Front beyond Iraq completely dismantled, unprotected. Well, I won't say completely, but largely dismantled and unprotected. Does Iran still have the ability, despite all of these setbacks, politically, militarily, economically, to defend its red line, the so-called red lines that they've stated about the border between Iran and Armenia? Does it have the ability to defend this red line in the South Caucasus?
If you mean through the military means, if I'm not wrong, in a war scenario for the protecting the Iran-Armenia borders, Iran and Russia need to cooperate because that Turkey is there, and Turkey is a member of NATO. Azerbaijan has the mutual defense with the Turkey, and these all are complicated. If you see, they started just in a real manner to establish Zangezur. It is because of that the Iran tools in the Middle East is weakened.
Mm-hmm.
That is why they just come, and they will come until you stop them. And that is why I have been calling Iranian governments just to believe Russian, Chinese, and to the region. Iran needs to work with them in a meaningful way. And the second issue that can protect in a war scenario, can protect the Iran-Armenian borders is a nuclear Iran. If Iran can become nuclear, everything will be changed. As I said, all these things depends to the balance of power. If Iran can win the war against Israel, there will not be any Zangezur. But if Iran lose, they will establish it. They will establish extraterritorial.
When you say the upcoming war, you talk about it as if it's almost a certainty that there will be a war coming. Has Iran learned lessons from its experiences, both in the 12-day war and also all these setbacks in 2024 in Lebanon, in Syria, Hamas, etc., which it is currently applying forward in its foreign policy and defense policy?
Military commanders, they got a costly lesson. The people of Iran, they got a costly lesson, and inside Iran, the advocating for a nuclear Iran is rising more and more. I wrote 2 years ago that Iran should become nuclear. Now those who were against it now say the same things. But in foreign ministry, no, they didn't listen. They still, as I said, they are constructivists. They think if you and your audiences know, those who believe constructivism, they believe the problems between the states and countries is in their mind, in leadership mind, not on the ground. That is the problem inside the Iran foreign ministry.
Hamid, when I was reading your article finishes by giving advice that Iran should modify its relationship with Armenia to move beyond symbolic diplomacy and beyond limited military gestures. I mean, we realize that, of course, this Trump thing happened, and there's a lot that could interfere with this advice. But your suggestions include to essentially develop cooperation in intelligence, deeper military coordination, logistics, filling in the security gap left by Russia, and so forth and so on. You know, besides the things that you mentioned, you know, the current Armenian government is widely viewed as pro-Western, and At the same time, the opposition, some elements within the opposition are definitely pro-Iranian, but the opposition has been so far powerless and largely ineffective in challenging the government's decision. And we have parliamentary elections coming up in 2026, but there's significant uncertainty because I believe the Western powers are going to use this Zangezur corridor, and the fake peace treaty as a way to help Pashinyan get reelected. So, how possible do you believe is a stronger Armenia-Iran partnership? Is it possible with the current regime in power, or does it depend on regime change in Yerevan?
I think it doesn't need a regime change in Yerevan. Despite if the government is changed in the next year election, if I'm not wrong, will be next year an election in Armenia. If the government is changed and the current opposition come to power, it's much easier. But with the Pashinyan, I think it's possible if Iran has a strategy. Let me give you an example. When in Iran, it was a fight inside the political establishment to just establish a consulate in Kapan in many years ago, a few years ago. And that some characters in Iran said at that time, no, we don't need consulate in Kapan. But at the end, military side just imposed what it wanted. The former chief of staff who was assassinated by Israel during the 12 days war, General Mohammad Bagheri, his PhD is focused on South Caucasus, and he was well aware what was going on. But for now, I think if Iran can just make a plan and allocate enough budget, I think the whole budget of the Armenian government is under 1 billion. And in Iran, their government are wasting 10 times more than this budget for something pointless. But they don't have any plan. If they make a plan, I'm sure that the Armenian society, bureaucracy, and governments finally welcome it. But I don't see any such plan in Iran.
Okay, and finally, as we mentioned earlier, next week Pezeshkian will visit Yerevan. Any thoughts on what the agenda of his visit will be, or if you were to advise him, if he's listening now, which he isn't, but if he's listening, what would your ideal agenda be between Yerevan and Tehran? What are some small victories that could be had very quickly?
A victory that I believe for the short term and emergency one, if Iran can convince Armenia to sign a military deal with Iran, Iran can have even limited military base, Syunik, that will be a big victory for Iran for the short term, and for the long term, and deepen economic relations. Iran should build a refinery in Armenia, send gas and oil to the Armenia, and all these things depend economic relation will not allow Pashinyan government let Western to come do whatever they want there.
Hovik, how do you know that Pezeshkian is not listening?
Maybe he is. We'll see. Mr. Pezeshkian,
I hope that.
With all due respect, I think that yes, it is our hope that they are listening. It is our hope that the various towers in the Iranian government are able to speak with a more unified voice, because it is disheartening from the Armenian perspective too to see differing voices coming from Iran. At least, I think for us that would be a victory, even if the voice is something we didn't want to hear. Hopefully it can be, unified, because I think even within the Armenian opposition, sometimes you hear one thing and at other times other, and it's very difficult to trust what's going to happen. So,
Actually, if Iran president just ask Iranian chief of staff or a high-ranking military commanders to go with him to in visiting Armenia, will be a sign, and
very good sign.
will be, I think, positive. But we need a practical, a real, not a symbol.
Completely agree. All right, let's leave it there for today. That's all the time we have. Thank you so much, Hamid Bahrami, for joining us. Thank you for your insight from an Iranian perspective.
Thanks, Asbed. Thanks, Hovik, and thank you for having me.
Well, that's our show, folks, and it was recorded on August 13, 2025. We've been talking with Hamid Bahrami, who is an Iranian independent international relations analyst specializing in Eurasian and Middle Eastern affairs. His research at the University of Glasgow examines Russia's policies in the South Caucasus. For more information, go to our pages, podcasts.groong.org/episode number.
I am Hovik Manucharyan from Gavar, Armenia.
And I'm Asbed Bedrossian. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you very soon.
Have a nice day.